grinder famous.
Well, hello there. And as you'll see before you, the Trijicon Credo 1-6 first focal plane red mill. The optic that you see in the display case but keep looking over. The optic that can't ever get a review from a large YouTube influencer. The optic that doesn't do that one exact subjective thing well, so because of an abstract justification never gets its time to shine. The optic that you should honestly look at because it does a lot of things well for hundreds less without many trade-offs or reduction in quality. Welcome, friends. Let's get started. First off, unlike other companies, it does come with scope caps and a little cover scope bra thingy. So Trijicon knows how to protect their optics unlike other manufacturers. Your weight is 18.9 ounces, we'll call it 19 ounces, and it's made out of 6061 T6 aluminum. Although Trijicon claims it comes in between 18.3 and 18.6 ounces, based on which literature you're reading, 18.9 ounces is about where it is, so call it 19. Your overall length is 10.9 inches, your overall width is 2.8 inches, which is namely going to be the turrets, with an overall height of 2 inches. Your magnification range is 1 to 6x. Your objective is 24 millimeters. Your tube diameter is 30 millimeters. It's a first focal plane optic. The field of view is 113.4 feet at 1x and 18.8 feet at 6x. Your eye relief is 3.5 to 3.9 inches. I finally figured out what this means, by the way, when they list it between a range. It's based on your diopter setting. And based on your diopter setting is going to be whether you have fisheye with this optic or not, which we'll get into. Reticle is your standard first focal plane Trijicon mill segmented circle with no wind holds. But in the Credo, it's been upgraded. The crosshair used to be solid in the AccuPower series, but they made a nice little tiny dot in the center and gave a little bit of tiny space in between the center dot and where the crosshair starts, so you could put it on a target and not lose the target at increased distances. Your adjustment is 0.1 MRAD, which is good. That's the kind of precision that we look for. Turrets are capped turrets with 29.1 MRAD of total travel. Your battery life is 68 hours on, I'm guessing, the max setting. I haven't tested it, but my buddy hasn't replaced the battery yet. Take that with a grain of salt. I never trust what the manufacturers say their battery life is. The Illumination is LED powered by one CR624-C-2900023 battery. There are no night vision settings.
Fuck.
And your LED illumination has 10 settings. Setting 1 is going to be so barely visible that you're going to say, no, it could go on the night vision setting. But honestly, if it's dark enough in the room or you cover the objective lens, you'll be able to see it if you look hard enough, which means under night vision, it's going to be oppressive. Despite how faint it is and despite how you might think it would work, it's not gonna. Water resistance depth is 10 feet. 10 to 11 feet is pretty standard for 30mm tube optics unless you have a Steiner or someone like that. They really test the hell out of their optics, but 10 feet to 11 feet is pretty standard. But at least they listed it, unlike other companies who just put waterproof. Your parallax is fixed at what I'm guessing is 100 yards. Trijicon and a bunch of other people just put fixed. I don't like that. Just tell us what it's fixed at. They're almost all fixed at 100 yards, but it's nice to know the information. So just publish it, man. You publish the water resistance depth. Why not just publish? Why do people gotta be this way? Why are you the way that you are?
Why are you the way that you are? Honestly, every time I try to do something fun or exciting, you make it not that way.
All right, so we're gonna hit turrets, throw direction, and magnification range. Your turrets. Turrets are quite nice, honestly. They have, these are cap turrets, and they have a very nice knurling on the top here. I'm gonna get really, really quiet. I'm only gonna go up 2 and back 2 because this is not mine, and I don't wanna mess up my buddy Zero. Oof, I jumped. I'm gonna go back up again. They're very, very positive and they're tactile. They are not audible, so it does take effort to move, but you could blaze through these if you wanted to, so it's not super high effort. Some guys like their turrets really, really stiff, so when they dial, they don't skip like I did when I was just demonstrating it, but honestly, these are fine. They're smaller turrets. So those of us used to larger turrets that are higher effort, you're gonna spin the hell out of these. So they're quality turrets, they're really, really good, and to change your zero, all you'd have to do is pull this straight up and set it straight down, and it's set the zero. Very easy and intuitive to use. They're positive, they're tactile, but not so audible, which at this price point is fine, and honestly, for practical application and use, you're not gonna be upset with how these turrets perform, especially since this optic is a set it and forget it. The windage, sorry, this is awkward, I don't wanna mess up this Delta Point Pro, is not marked L or R, it's just numbers. On the side here, you'll note that it says impact R, which means if you want the bullet to impact more to the right, then you would spin it in this direction. I would like the L or R's on the numbers, but not all turrets are created equal. And to be honest, you're not gonna be dialing with this. This is a set it and forget it, so essentially make your adjustments and then leave it. Your illumination turret is 1 to 10, and it spins all the way around. So no weird Steiner P4XI stuff. This is probably the highest effort turret out of the 3, and you really gotta be deliberate with how you turn it. But this isn't a turret that's gonna get spun inadvertently on your gear or anything like that, which is nice. And 10 is, I wanna say daylight visible, but not daylight bright. Most reticles where it illuminates anything but the center are not gonna be daylight bright. And that's true with this as well as the 1 to 8 and probably the other Trijicon optics because it's illuminating a large reticle. So while it's daylight visible and the only footage I have is either indoors or in a outdoor environment while it's overcast, when I do the indoor footage, it's on 6, and the outdoor footage, even though it's overcast, is on 10. You can see it probably around 7, but if you're looking for aim point bright, you're not gonna get it with this optic. All right, throw direction is left to right. It's a 180-degree throw, but where the little supplied stubby throw lever thingy is, it doesn't quite go all the way over. So you're gonna stop somewhere in the 230 position, but it's still fine. You can still grab it, no problem. And while it is very stiff, you can do it in one throw. You don't have to, some optics you gotta like go like this because they're so stiff. This one, so long as you're deliberate, you can go through the whole mag range while you're on the gun. Not a big deal. This isn't the largest contact surface, but it's there, and one of your fingers can make contact with it and move it through the magnification range. So there isn't an arrow, but it's just a small punch mark. So you have 1, 1.5, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 happens very quickly. Again, it's very smooth, but it is higher effort. Not Vortex Razor Gen 2 high effort, but it's still more deliberate effort than a lot of people have become accustomed to with some of the newer offerings out there. The benefit of this though is you're not going to bump it and change your magnification. It's going to be pretty difficult to do. The only way that's going to happen is if this gets caught on your gear and you force it downwards, it might bump it up a little bit. But luckily 1, 1.5, and 2, even 3x is pretty usable, so you're not going to have too many issues there. All right, let's move on to everybody's favorite topics, eye relief and eye box. Eye relief is generally pretty good. I don't really have too many issues. This is about where I would mount the optic, although my buddy's a little taller than me, and his neck is a little longer than mine. His head position is different than my head position, so I have to adjust the stock if I'm going to use it. The eye relief gets a little tighter at 6x, but if you mount it at 6 and then dial it back out to check at 1x, as you should with every single optic, you're not really going to run into too many issues. I haven't found myself noting that there's an eye relief issue when using this optic. It's usually I make my adjustments when he lets me shoot his rifle and go to work, which is good. I'm not saying it's not there, and some of you guys like to mount these things really far forward, and I don't know how your eyes work, but
I have special eyes.
It's important to set your diopter, and you'll get that 3.5 to 3.9 inches easily based on where the diopter setting is and where you mount it. I've, again, never really found myself saying the eye relief sucks on this thing. Eye box is pretty good, especially at 1x. It's pretty forgiving, it's easy to get behind. It does get tighter from 4 to 6x. That's to be expected. Coming off the Razor Gen 3 review, this one was much easier to work with by a country mile. It's not even comparable. That's also to be expected with a 1 to 6. 1 to 6s aren't going through extreme magnification. 1 to 6 is pretty flushed out, and you will get a slightly tighter eye box, but it's not going to be anything ridiculous. And you're going to be shooting from a supported position of some sort on 6x unless you're, again, Don Fry or some sort of muscular dude that can just like lock out and do impressive things I can't. But more often than not, realistically speaking, when you're on 5 or 6x, you're going to be supported. If you're making an argument for 3 or 4x, I get it, and the eye box is still pretty good at 3 and 4x. All right, time to move on to glass clarity and image quality. Glass clarity is very good. The glass is from the Low factory in Japan. There's a lot of optics that come out of there, the Delta Stryker, Vortex Razor line. I think SAI also uses the Low factory. Trijicon's using them now. So there's a lot of companies that use that glass. It's very sought after and really good clarity glass based on the options that your particular company that you prefer is using. And the only real competition to that is European glass. So take that how you will, but the glass clarity is very good. Light transmission is very solid, and the colors are true. My 1:8 seems to have a little bit of a brown tint now, and I don't know why, but the 1:8s have, at least in the AccuPower series, not in the Credo series, but the AccuPowers have a little bit of a tint, a warm brown tint. I have not experienced that with the Trijicon Credo 1 to 6. I'm sure the Credo 1 to 8 is the same, but you get a very, very nice, clear, clean, true image, which makes me very happy. Moving to image quality, my buddy's eye is close to mine, but not exact. So where he has his diopter set is not where I would do it. It probably needs like a quarter turn, but it's his optic and I'm not gonna mess with it. I did get the opportunity to mess with other Credos, both the second focal plane on my buddy Jumping Biscuits 16-inch, and I did mess with another sample where I could mess with the diopter. When I did that, there was no fisheye. But on this, because there's no increased magnification at 1x, it's the closest to a true 1x I have ever seen, period. Nice flat image. When you look through the GoPro of all things, you don't see any fisheye. You can see it through the Razor, you can see it through the primary arms that I had to play with for a little bit, but you don't see it through this. And I didn't see it through the one I was able to adjust the diopter on. With this, on this current setting, when I move it a little too quick, I see something for like a quarter second while I'm moving. I'm like, what was that? And it's probably just the diopter setting. I'm not gonna tell you that there's zero fisheye, but I'm not gonna say that there's egregious fisheye that it is on my Razor Gen 3, where no matter where I put the diopter, where the diopter's perfect for my eye, there's still fisheye. With this, I can dial it out. So do with that what you will. And the general rule of thumb for me is once you get your eye relief, if you adjust it to the point where the reticle is nice and crystal clear, and for this optic specifically, the scope body, when you adjust the diopter perfectly, is its smallest. When the diopter's set for my eye and the scope body's the smallest and the reticle is also subsequently the clearest, it feels perfect. But there's other times where I'm like moving it around. I'll brush by the ceiling fan as I'm moving around the room, and the very top quarter, I'll say, kind of does this weird thing where it's almost like, but again, not my rifle, not my optic. When I get my own, I'll follow up. I would definitely default to C-Does assessment of this optic though. He did a review. He was pretty upset about it being the green and not the red as it was indicated in the box. The red is by far superior, which I'll get to in a minute, but he noted that there was a little bit of fisheye. I don't know if he adjusted the diopter. I'm pretty sure he would. He's done way more optics reviews than I have. So I definitely defer to his judgment, and he's really good about showing those different engagement distances through his window. So I would default to him. I haven't run into the same exact things he has, so I don't know if there's a variance between the optics or not. But again, he's more of an optic reviewer than I am. I'm like, return to monkey. Just give me something that works. I just pull it up and use it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I hate it. You know, I'm more of a practical shooter kind of guy. C-Does and Dark Lord of Optics, those two dudes are really stellar with how they look at fisheye, how they look at chromatic aberration, all those other things. And I haven't seen chromatic aberration in this optic either. So take that with a grain of salt. Definitely go check out the C-Does review. It's in the description. Reticle. As always, reticles are very subjective. This reticle is very fast and easy for me to use. On 1x all the way to 6x. For whatever reason, Trijicon got it in line with my preferences for that. Now you're not gonna have any wind holds. You're not gonna have any ranging features. This is kind of a big boy reticle like some of the old ones where you have to use the reticle to do the things you wanna do. There is that cool box of death feature that I've noticed 200 and 300 yards with the 1 to 8 that also works on the 1 to 6. So long as I can get it within those first mil hash marks in the crosshair, I'm gonna get my hit. And for some reason, this optic, especially at 1x when I'm moving quickly, draws my eye to the center. And when it's at 6x, I don't have trouble using it. I know some guys really don't like it. It's all personal preference. So I'm not gonna tell you it's the best reticle out there. It doesn't have a lot of features that people look for, but I found it really, really fast and intuitive to use, and I haven't had any trouble getting my hits, even with a little wind. It's up to the individual user to assess whether this reticle works for you or not. Illumination, I already hit on it, but it's daylight visible, not daylight bright, like a dot projection optic would be. So like a Steiner P4XI, your Vortex PST Gen 2, the Razor, anything like that that has just a dot projection, or the Attackers or the Vortex Razor Gen 3 that just illuminate the donut and the dot in the center. Those reticles are always going to be brighter because of the scope of what's being illuminated. So how they illuminate the reticle is going to determine whether it's daylight bright or not. Just keep that in mind. This is daylight visible, but not daylight bright. 100% get the red one. I don't care if the green one is $200 less and on the shelf. Don't buy the green one. Trijicon cannot figure out how to do green illumination. It's not like the ACOGs. The ACOGs can do green illumination. But for some reason, when they go to their LPVOs, they cannot get the illumination straight with the green. So keep that in mind. Always get the red, period. All right, so my 3 brackets for optics. Is it a 3-gun/hunting optic, a tactical optic, or a military grade optic? Obviously, Trijicon makes the VCOG if you need go-to-war level reliability. No one is ever going to say the VCOG is not hard use. This is clearly a tactical optic. It's their mid-tier stuff. They have 2 different tiers of Credo. This one is the first focal plane red mil. It's not their HLX, I think. The HLX and this are on 2 different tiers. Most people don't know, but the Vortex Razor Gen 2 and Gen 3 are made out of the same aluminum. If you can use those pretty hard, you can probably use these pretty hard. And I know there's differences on the internals, and it's up to the glue they use and the detents and all that other stuff. This is going to put up with the same punishment that any 6061 T6 aluminum 30mm tube Japanese low glass optic is going to put up with. Is that to your standards or not? I don't know. If you have incredible standards, just get a VCOG and leave me alone. But I'm comfortable saying this is a tactical use optic. All right, what it's good at. Very easy to get behind and work with through the magnification range. For me, I can get behind it and go to work without fighting the eye box or eye relief at all. The Badger C1 definitely helps put the optic right where it needs to be for my eye, but generally speaking, this optic is very easy to use. And when I shot Jumping Biscuit's rifle, he had the second focal plane Credo on it, and it was the same deal. Very easy to get behind. I didn't fight it at all. I wasn't like, man, where's the head placement supposed to be? It was just bring the rifle up and use it, which is huge. It's also a lightweight 1-6 in first focal plane. It's great for most general purpose rifle builds or fighting rifle, any of that stuff. You don't want to get too heavy if you can help it. Some guys like really heavy rifles, but honestly, if you're trying to keep in that mid-range where it's nice to use for almost anything, 19 ounces is a good place to be to give you some sort of robust use optic without weighing you down. It's great for intermediate use ranges of the 5.56, though it might start to fade out at about the normal use extreme end around the 500 yard mark. And C-Does also highlighted that in his review. Once he starts going to 400 or 500 yards, you start getting a mixture of clarity and blurriness on the extreme edges. Mostly when you have something at a particular range and there's material or objects in between that range, which is kind of to be expected. Whatever you're focusing on should be the clear spot in the optic, but some guys really like it when you can see everything clearly at every range. Not every optic can do that, but for a 1-6 30mm tube, this is going to be a really solid performer for those intermediate ranges on a 5.56 gun. It's excellent to run and pick up at 3 or 4x with the offset dot like this setup is. You don't feel like you're not able to get your proper head placement, eye relief, and eye box when you just rip it up at 3 power or 4 power. And this mount and optic combination are really solid. Also, the last point I'm going to hit is this zeroed very, very quickly. It was probably about 6 or 7 rounds. The adjustments were on, and it was very low stress, low drama to get mounted out to the range, zeroed, and then right off to the races. It's a very, very good optic. What it's bad at, this is going to shock a lot of you, I know, but it's not a precision scope. Because it's pretty good at a lot of things. Some people are going to want to make it do more than it's capable of doing, and it's just not meant for those expectations. A 1-6 is a 1-6. A 1-6 is not going to give you insane capability out to distance, and some people have a really difficult time accepting that, but those are your limitations. It's not going to be good for use with night vision.
What? Oh my God! Who told you?
I don't think anyone's passively aiming through an LPVO. Anyone with nods that run them regularly can comment in the comments below how you would do that. I think it's with an add-on device. I don't have that money, so I don't have one. And I don't have nods yet, so I don't know. You're not going to be able to use it for night vision stuff. All right, next to the thing it's not so great at, the field of view is average, and it could be a touch better, but it's also not terrible. So being middle of the road is a massive offense, I guess. People will excuse the NX8 for its eye box and eye relief issues, but at the same time, they'll be like, oh, this optic does it better, but it's not as good as this one, so because it's average, it's garbage. No, but it's about a feature set that's gonna fit you. However, we can't just blow past the fact that there's other optics with a wider field of view. So your field of view, when you're on the optic, doesn't feel bad at all. You don't feel constrained, and it's some magic with the eyepiece back here, but it doesn't necessarily feel super tight. Like my VCOG, you feel every bit of how thick that tube is and how small the rear eyepiece is. But for some reason, this optic feels a lot nicer and easier to get behind versus the VCOG, having been able to compare those two. But the field of view is not as good as some other offerings out there. The Vortex comes to mind, and I'm sure there's other ones. Another thing it's not so great at is, as with everything, especially currently, price and availability will have you asking, why get this over this? Which is based on feature sets, and honestly is a very important question you do need to ask yourself. I think these are well priced at $850 to like $935. That's probably my comfort range with that. Some places still charge $1,000 for these, which I think is a little too much. And that's kind of like the red line. If I had to have one and I didn't have one, which I don't right now, when they come back in stock, because the glass is from Japan and you know what's going on with the shipping problems right now, but if the price is at $1,000, I'm gonna be like, I don't know, that's like right on the line for me. Anything north of $1,000 is gonna hurt, and it might affect my decision. And honestly, with inflation, I don't know how much longer we can say that anyway. Next point, kind of like I hit earlier, this isn't a VCOG, but it doesn't cost what a VCOG costs. But it's not a 7075 VCOG, which is the standard for hard use. Adjust your expectations accordingly. If you want to pay VCOG money, just get the VCOG. And lastly, this isn't the 1:8. So a lot of guys are like, the Trijicon 1:8 exists for more money, and it should perform to that standard. And there's other people that know that a 30mm tube optic can't perform to a 34mm tube optic with a 28mm objective. It does suck because, yes, the 1:8 exists, but it's 25 ounces, and it's more expensive. I have one, I love it. I'm gonna get another one. And it's not great at everything, but because the 1:8 exists, people are like, is this 1:6 even worth it? So a lot of guys do that balancing act. Do I just get the 1:4 and the 1:8? Or do I get a 1:6 that I want to be the 1:8, but it'll never be? Who knows? But because the 1:8 exists, people are gonna be upset at the 1:6's performance based on that. So a lot of the recce enthusiasts are gonna be upset that the 1:6 isn't gonna do that for you. Sorry, Doughboy Recce Division. You're gonna have to find something else to LARPerate your recce missions to Walmart with.
Holy shit, you fucking killed her, dude!
All right, closing it out. How do I feel about this optic? I'm gonna be honest with you, I love it. It's easy for me to use in the practical shooting disciplines I'm capable of doing and would reasonably have to do. I'm not really good at extreme long range. The farthest I've shot so far is 400 yards, and I'm comfortable going out to 400. I could probably do 500. Outside of that, I'm gonna want Harambe. This optic will do home defense out to intermediate engagement ranges. Sure, it's not daylight bright and it's missing some cool wind holds, but I get my points of contact at presentation and go to work, which is huge for me. Honestly, that's a great measure for an optic. Doing transitions with the offset dot was seamless, which is aided of course by the Badger 170C1, but the eye box and eye relief was a big factor. You saw in the intro, and I'll re-roll it here, after being awkward panda on the bench, I jumped over to the 15-yard close quarter combat distance range, and it was seamless. I was able to just pull it up and go to work and transition between what the Credo was set on, which was 3x, and the dot. So it was easy to just pull it up, press shots at 3x, roll it over, hit the dot, and roll back over. It was very easy to do. And it's so effortless, in fact, this makes me hate my URGI setup with my Vortex 1-10 on it. And it's so seamless and light on its feet, it feels way faster than my setup, and I'm upset about it. This optic is one of 3 that I'll be testing for 1-6s, which will be the Delta Stryker, I know it's second focal plane, and the SAI 1-6, Canadians Rejoice, and obviously the Trijicon Credo, first focal plane, Red Mill. Although I'm gonna be honest with you, it's hard to justify anything else after using this Credo. I'm also finding that people look at stat sheets and perceived capabilities versus how practical or useful something is for the fighting rifle application they're chasing. For me, the more I shoot and the more I run different setups for a 14.5, 16-inch GPR or fighting rifle, whatever you want to call it, what is working best for me is the 1-6 in a 17 to 19 ounce package in a Badger 170 mount. That's the sweet spot for me. 1-8 is good too, but if you're looking to keep it a touch lighter, 1-6 all day. I genuinely love this thing, and while it doesn't give you everything the 1-8 does, it's still very solid and effective. We'll see how it stacks up versus the SAI, but it's a strong performer in the 1-6 first focal plane bracket, and I expect it to continue to do well and hold a solid place in my inventory. Definitely recommend this optic. Thanks for watching. Take care out there.